Welcome to the awesome pechakucha presentation to go along with my Engaging Students with Text assignment for Education 505, Integrating Literacy and Secondary Content Instruction. I chose to do the pechakucha presentation so that you would be able to hear me justify and explain what's going on, as well as showing you examples of the text and the sources students will be using. Here are the three standards. These are the core curriculum standards met by the lesson, and these are met throughout the course, as well as each supplemental text meeting one of the listed standards featured here. You can see that there's one from the key ideas and details section, one from the craft and structure. The lesson's objective is stated here. Now this is the objective for the overall lesson. Now this is a 2-week unit on the Louisiana Purchase, and so there is also a minimum of 10 lessons within the unit. This is the objective for the unit. You can see here that it deals with primary sources and other media and culminates in a class discussion. Featured here are the sources that we'll be using. On the left is the class core textbook. This is an 8th grade U.S. history class. They're in the first half of the semester, and here is the core textbook. Next to it are the supplemental texts we'll be using: a primary source letter, a film and music clip, and a collection of primary source maps. Students will receive direct instruction lessons prior to beginning the supplemental text, as well as reading of the textbook, which here is an example of a think aloud for the section related to the Louisiana Purchase Expedition. Students would participate in that prior to starting with the supplemental text to build a background and confirm understanding. There are 2 Idaho State standards met by the lesson, one related to migration and immigration, and the other related to exploration and expansion. And again, as with the objectives, these are the standards met by the entire unit, not the daily lessons. Our first supplemental text is seen here. It's a 4-page letter written from Thomas Jefferson to Meriwether Lewis prior to beginning the Louisiana Purchase Expedition. In it, Jefferson outlines the purpose of the expedition and gives Meriwether Lewis instructions. Students will be able to view the letter as shown here in Jefferson's own hand before beginning working with a transcript. Now you can see the Common Core addressed on the top. It helps students recognize the author's point of view. This is a letter written from one man to another, and in dealing with the primary source, the context, and the perspective of the author, students will begin to think as a historian, recognizing what they know that Jefferson did not know, as well as his motive and his biases. Now this is a relatively difficult text, and we'll begin the instruction by actually going through as a class and identifying the internal text structures. Here is an example of the first page broken down, and on the side margins you can see a summary of what that paragraph is about. We'll go through as a class and mark this for the entire text before students deal with it individually. And that's because students will be doing it through a T-chart and then a jigsaw. They'll be assigned a portion of the letter within their reading group to go through and highlight the paragraph summary and then how that relates to the overall letter, and then share it with their group. The text is relatively difficult, but it's made easier as we use the text structure, and it helps students learn to think as a historian. Here we have our second supplemental text, which is the Schoolhouse Rock video Elbow Room, related to Manifest Destiny. You can see here that the film deals with the Louisiana Purchase, and it further deals with westward expansion and the different factors leading into it. Students will have a chance to view the film prior to going through the literacy skills. Now here we see the Common Core goal at the top is to be able to get to the central idea of the message. Prior to watching the video, we'll have a little classroom discussion addressing the questions as shown on the board, and the goal of this, the outcome of this lesson, is to help students deal with multifaceted information. First, they will view the film and scanning it. Then they will be able to predict and write questions. Then they will be given the lyrics to read. In partners, they will be able to recite what they think the meaning is and how it relates to the 2 things we've previously talked about, the chapters in the book and then the Jefferson letter, and then they will review it a second time, watch the film, and have a chance to share their answers to their questions and if their predictions were met. This text is medium difficulty. It has complex ideas, but because of the verbal, the audio, and the visual, it's made much easier, and students are able to access the information through various modes. This is an example of cognitive learning theory, as students analyze their thoughts as well as that of their peers. The previous supplemental text was also cognitive learning theory, as they thought about what they were reading and the author's point of view. Now here's our third supplemental text. It is a collection of maps related to population density ranging from 1800 to 2000. Students will have access to all of these maps in pairs, and they will work in partners to create a discussion web. We can see on the top is the Common Core standard being met, which is integrating visual information with other forms of information. And we'll begin the class with a discussion, and it will also culminate with a classroom discussion relating to the previous themes of the unit. We want students to be able to make predictions and connect with prior knowledge. That's the outcome goal of this lesson. In Partners, students will create a discussion web based on the discussion held as a class. That's where they'll choose their question. You can see the question here is westward expansion due to the Lewis and Clark expedition, and then in Partners, students will have a chance to review each of the 20 maps, sorry. And then in small groups, so 2 partnerships, they'll review their discussion webs and come to a consensus related to the conclusion. It's okay for students to be wrong at any point in this discussion. We want to help them see that making connections and that activating their prior knowledge, they can come to a different consensus as long as they're coming from the same place. And then as a class, we'll have a discussion where they'll be able to refer to their discussion web, and everyone is welcome to participate, and with the understanding that we're just looking at the goal, things that we've learned. You can see here that this test has medium difficulty because there's little written information, but it does require students to write and then to present orally. And then we want students to be able to integrate different kinds of information. And this is an example of constructivism as they draw from previous resources and elements of the lesson. And you can see here are the references and the sources I used in compiling this assignment. A fuller list can be found on the Word doc attached with this upload. Thanks.